back to Triple Threat. Today, I'm so excited to introduce my very good friend and colleague, Rose Ann Cerofeci, because she aligns perfectly with step 3. Step 3, which is to identify the cause of those beliefs and behaviors that are no longer serving us. So I'm thrilled to report that Ms. Cerofeci, aka Professor Rose Ann, is here today to talk about not only your step 3 for snapping out, but also her Just Get Curious. Let me introduce Professor Rose Ann. Rose Ann and I go back 2 or 3 years, a couple of decades or more, to our days where we met at UCLA in undergrad. And Rose Ann is a professor, and she's been teaching 18-year-old students for more than 20 years. She has a master's of education in counseling, and she has a master's of English. So she's double master's, which I didn't know until I read her bio. And we will link that in the show notes if you want to look at that, and also have a link to her website. But Rose Ann, tell us a little bit more about Just Get Curious and how that was birthed.
Well, I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me. Just Get Curious came out of after working with students for 20 years, 18, 19-year-olds, and working primarily with freshmen in college, true freshmen. And what I've noticed over the last 20 years is they've really changed a lot. Since smartphones, since COVID, we've really seen a shift in their happiness. This is a generation who's really struggling with a lot of anxiety, with a lot of depression, and a lot of isolation, really. And so I felt compelled to really find a way to intervene. Like, it was my duty almost when I'm sitting there and working with these students and I'm teaching them how to write an essay, and they're just looking at them as a whole student. They needed so much more. And I wasn't really equipped to do that. So I went back and did more schooling and got became a certified life coach, and then wrote curriculum to really help these students identify what was going on and to create change in their lives.
Okay, so if we were going to identify what is going on, are you specifically talking about identifying a belief?
Yes, and the thing is that it's not just 18-year-olds, right? Like, this is what we're talking about today is for everyone. So you were talking about the cause. And so, I mean, they're all connected,
yes, right? So this is not a linear process at all. So that is a good point. I want to point out, as you go through the steps, it's not linear necessarily, right? Because as we move into step 4 and step 5, there may be an emotion that comes up that causes the catalyst for change, right? So it's not necessarily linear, but in order to teach it and get the concept out, we teach in a step-by-step way.
So what I realized is the way that people show up in the world is directly connected to their belief systems, right? So if students are sitting there and they're isolated or they're depressed, what limiting beliefs, as you already know this, what limiting beliefs are causing them to not show up as their best self, or to causing them to be there? Well, the cause can go back to, most of the time, the cause started in patterns that we learned in the first 3 years of our lives.
Right.
So we have to go back and understand, what are my belief systems? And then when you're looking at your belief systems, you identify the cause, and the curiosity comes in, which is probably the most important part, because what I learned is that a lot of times when we're looking back or we're trying to identify our belief system, we associate a lot of shame with that, especially with behaviors that we don't like.
Okay, you're getting ahead of us, because I do want to go into the shame and the shame cycle. Before we go into the shame cycle, because I do want you to touch on that and address that, let's go back to the cause. So when a person is a baby and they have certain needs, a need to be fed, a need to be loved, a need to be attended to in some way. And we've already talked about the limbic system and the brain and how that creates belief systems. So we've already addressed that. That's one of our ands. But the baby's in the crib and the baby needs to eat and the baby's crying. And so those needs may or may not be attended to. Compound that year upon year, where a child is not necessarily getting a need met, okay? But the child does not look at the primary caregiver as, you should have fed me. You should have picked me up and cared for me. You should have given me physical touch. Rather, the child looks at the caregiver as though the caregiver is a hero. And so then that child thinks there's something wrong with me, right? And it creates the belief of I'm unworthy. And that year upon year of these micro neglectful behaviors that create a belief in a child then causes what I call the neural superhighway. And we've already, Alex and I addressed that briefly about how a belief system can become so ingrained. Now, the cause of the belief, or we'll move into cause of the behavior as well, but the cause of the belief could have come from somebody external as well. Isn't that right?
Well, yeah. I mean, those patterns that are established, our brain loves patterns.
Yes.
So that's what happens, is that when you're a child, your brain starts to see the patterns, and then without even you knowing it, your brain will start to seek out those patterns to reinforce it.
Yes.
So if I was neglected early on, then my brain says, oh, this is the pattern.
This is love.
So then it starts to look for neglect in other relationships.
Right. This is how I feel love because it's familiar, because this is the pattern that I'm used to. Or the emotionally
reinforces.
Right, the emotionally unavailable partner because of a belief system that emotional unavailability equates with love, right?
Well, and what's really important here also is that if you think about your brain as an organ, that's really amazing the way that it works. It's super efficient. It wants these patterns.
Yes.
It doesn't judge if that's a good or bad.
Exactly.
So it's repeating these patterns, and then it's saying, oh, I'm going to make your life easy. I'm going to seek out these patterns so that
to reinforce the belief.
So a really important point here, and this is why, again, if we go back to understanding the cause, we don't want to judge our causes.
Right.
Because every behavior has a positive intention.
Okay, before we get into that, thank you. Pause on that. Every behavior has a positive intention. I agree. But before we get there, let's dissect that. Okay. So if there was a cause, the belief is based on a cause or a belief that was given to us. When you did a podcast with Kathy, you talked about a belief that a person needs to go to college in order to, or go to a higher education in order to be successful in life, right? Did that belief originate with you, or did that originate from a family of origin, right?
Oh, definitely back in my family of origin. Education was critical.
Right. So identify, I'm sorry to interrupt, identify the cause, because if it didn't originate with you, then you can evaluate whether or not that cause is serving you any longer. And what Rose Ann said is key, because it's without judgment. And so this is where the radical compassion comes in. This is the radical self-love. Before we go into the examples of the cause of the belief or the cause of the behavior, we know from what we talked about a few podcasts ago that sometimes the cause is to numb emotional pain, right? So some maladaptive behaviors are as a result of trying to numb certain pain. Rose Ann, if you can just now give examples of identifying the beliefs and the cause of those beliefs. Go ahead.
Well, I have one that we share. So as sorority sisters in college, and it's a very high pressure time.
Yes.
And I know that a lot of young women struggle with food.
And men.
Yes, and men. Thank you.
And binary.
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
And one of the things that we together struggled with in college at that time was using food as a coping mechanism.
What about alcohol?
Yeah.
we're about to have a retreat with four sorority sisters.
Okay, so that's another.
After this podcast, we're driving to Tucson, Arizona. I've already announced that I'm not drinking, and there's pressure.
Yeah.
You know who you are. Tacos and tequila, Friday night. No,
true.
Thank you.
I know. But food is a common coping, but alcohol is too. You're right.
Absolutely.
And so we go back to what's the cause? And I think when you're using food as a coping mechanism, or alcohol, or anything, remember that every behavior has a positive intention.
What do you mean when you say every behavior has a positive intention? That's an interesting concept.
Okay, so for example, I don't like the fact that I was using food and overeating.
Okay.
And I could shame myself about it, and I hated it, and I wanted to stop.
Right.
But for whatever reason, I'm struggling with this. If I'm getting curious about the behavior instead of being angry at myself or shaming myself, if I look at it and say, okay, I know that every behavior has a positive intention. So what would be positive about stuffing my face with food to not deal with my emotions?
Comfort.
100%.
Love.
Right? Love. So
Self-care.
I wasn't capable.
Self-care.
So I wasn't capable of self-care or comfort or love on my own at that time. So my brain, my body was finding ways to give that to me.
Okay.
Now, if I go back to the cause, why would I use food in the same way that somebody would use alcohol or something else? Well, as a child growing up, I remember my parents saying like, oh, when you get good grades, here's an ice cream. So you learn the reward that way.
Okay.
And then as an adult, oh, when I feel bad about myself or when I need to self-soothe, here comes the food.
Right.
Well, that behavior is no longer serving me.
There you go. Bingo. Pause. No longer serving you.
But I can thank it.
Correct.
It was a positive intention. That behavior was keeping me safe.
Yes.
By helping me to cope.
Yes.
By allowing me to feel that I was deserving. But when I got curious about it, because I was like, I don't really like this behavior anymore. And then I recognized this behavior is no longer serving me.
Right.
That provides curiosity, provides an opportunity for me to say, what's the cause?
Right.
It's no longer serving me.
Right.
Thank you for your service.
Right.
Eating that pint of ice cream, but you're no longer serving me, and so now I can release you and find other ways to cope.
So that behavior which kept you safe is like inside the cages of the bars of the cages. Imagine a bird cage, right? Inside those bars, you were safe. But then when that behavior no longer served you, you could open those bars and move into freedom. Right? Move into a new lifestyle of joy and peace and health because you're no longer using a maladaptive behavior that was previously an adaptive behavior, but it no longer served you. So the language no longer serving me is extremely helpful.
The compassion there is what's really critical because when we understand that a behavior is no longer serving us, rather than feeling badly about that behavior, again, having compassion and thanking the behavior for keeping us safe allows us to release it.
Right.
Without having shame. It's coming from an understanding. Oh, I can look back. I understand where this behavior came from.
Right.
It kept me safe.
Right.
Now I have compassion more for myself.
Right.
And I can then say, this behavior is no longer serving me. Thank you for the job that you did. I now release you so that I can get out of that bird cage.
Okay, so I love that. And this is so exciting to have you explain it to our viewers and our listeners because I was able to use your no longer serving me when we met for lunch about 3 months ago. Do you remember that? Do you remember the conversation?
Do tell me.
You had seen the bird outside. Remember the bird?
Oh, we saw the hawks.
We saw the birds. So I told you a story about how I was driving in Napa with my girlfriend. We had just gone to a winery. We hadn't been drinking, but we were enjoying the winery and drove past some deer that were on the side of the road. And I slowed way down because I didn't want to hit the deer. Well, there was a car behind me that laid on the horn and then decided to fly around me, past me on the right-hand side, which you're not supposed to do. I wasn't going that slow. I was going about 40. And so I flipped him off, Alex. Okay? I mean, we all know about road rage in LA, but this was in Napa, and I thought I was safe doing it in Napa. No, forget it. The guy, black Cadillac Escalade, stops in front of me in the middle of the street. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Oh my gosh.
I know. There was not a traffic light. It was the middle of the street. So he starts coming toward my car. And I don't know. I, for some reason, think really quickly in an emergency situation. And I just saw him like come past his bumper and he was going to come to the driver's side of the car. And I and went around him really fast. He lost his mind and chased us. We were in a car chase, Alex. Okay, in Napa, Sleepy Town. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. So I literally outran him. He actually got in front of me again. I don't remember how. I kind of don't remember all of the details, but there was an opportunity for me to make a right-hand turn. So I waited. He was in front, 2 cars in front. So he didn't get out when he was in front of me. There was a traffic light and other cars. He didn't get out. But as soon as the right-hand lane cleared and there were no cars, I went around and turned right, and I didn't stop on the red light. Okay. Lost him. Well, 2 months later, I don't know how long later, I get a notice in the mail from Napa. Here's the photograph of your car running a red light on turning right on red and running it. Well, I had a good reason, in my opinion. And so there were other photographs. It wasn't a ticket. It was a warning or something. I don't know. It was the universe. I'm not even joking. I think it was the universe teaching me a lesson. So I called the number and I said, do you see that picture of the other car? There's the car. There's the black car that was chasing mine. And he's the reason why I turned right on red and didn't stop. And if you don't believe me, you can call the girl that was in the car with me. And as a witness, she can tell you the exact same story. And I promise I won't talk to her before you call her. Well, sure enough, they reached out using his license plate and identified that car, called him up and asked him what had happened. And he said, which time?
Ooh,
right.
Yeah.
So I didn't get a ticket, thank God. And I told Rose Ann this story at lunch. And she said, well, let's get curious. She said, how is that behavior serving you? And I said, well, I fight back. If somebody like treads on me and honks their horn at me for no legitimate reason, I'm going to fight back. But it wasn't, necessarily appropriate for me to do that and fight back. He could have just honked his horn at me and I could have just allowed it to happen and kept driving. She said, well, let's get curious about that. How did your fighting back behavior serve you? Well, let's take it all the way back. I was raised in the South, right? Good little girls don't speak up and get angry and have an opinion and talk loud. And so it served me. I had to suppress that behavior until I became a litigator. And then, of course, now fighting back is my career, which I take great pleasure in doing. But that behavior no longer serves me in my regular civilian everyday life. And so you said, let's release that. And I did. And I haven't gotten that lesson since. But I had that lesson from the universe a couple times. That wasn't the only time. So the universe is trying to grow us and teach us. And we can take our behaviors, our maladaptive behaviors, whether it's eating too much to numb the pain of whatever, or to love oneself because we reward ourselves with food, or if it's fighting back. We talked about fight, flight, freeze, or fawn already, in order to get to our highest best self, our most authentically aligned self. But if that behavior is coming back to bite us, like it happened to me, then we can get curious about it.
Well, that's a really good point, because once you release it or once you're aware of it, it's still going to show up.
One more time.
It's going
one more time.
Yeah, it's going to keep showing up.
Right, but guess what? If you learn that lesson and you release it and you really, really release it when it shows back up again, the universe is like, okay, next, move on to the next lesson.
Well,
right?
it's an awareness. When you have, once you have the awareness that this behavior is no longer serving me, it's going to keep showing up. And the way to deal with that is to find humor in it.
Okay.
So
say
now,
more about that.
So now when the universe shows up, so you get in that situation again and you get the fight back and you can feel your body doing it. And you're then all of a sudden, if you have the awareness, okay, wait a minute, this is no longer serving me. I find instead of getting that angst, what calms us down is makes us, if you start laughing and you go, okay, I see what you're doing. You're challenging me again so that I can really release this. It's almost like, I think of it almost like the universe, like tapping on your shoulder.
Like, remember
this, remember this.
Or did you really want to hold that boundary? So I'm in agreement with that. And I have an example of the boundary being tested. So as we know, when we set boundaries with people that we love or people that we don't love, they will test that. They push on that boundary.
Absolutely.
Okay. So I did get another test. It came back. You're right.
It always will until you really own, the pattern is changed.
Okay, so let me ask you this then, Professor.
Yes.
A week ago, I was driving to Northern California with my dogs, and I stopped in a small town to let them out to go to the dog park. And there was a man, same age as the men that I fight in court, in the large dog section with two little small dogs, and I have two large dogs, and so they were the only ones there, and then there's a whole different section for the small dogs. So when I pulled in with my two large dogs, his two little yappy small dogs came up and right at the fence, precluding me from going in there. Well, I could have gotten upset. Do you think I did?
I think you laughed and said, oh.
I didn't laugh, but here's what I did. I was a little snarky. Maybe I have to have another lesson. So I said to him, well, no, here's what happened. Well, there were two tests. Here's why. So the first thing I said was, oh, ha, 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 your little dogs are on the large dog side. And he didn't do anything. He walked over, but he wasn't going to do anything. And then, of course, I'm starting to get like, move your dogs. I want to go in there, right? I'm on a mission here. I've got to get to my destination. We're doing a little quick.
The universe is tapping you on the shoulder.
Right. So I said, oh, well, I did try to use humor. I go, haha, they're a little snack, right? that's me using humor. I mean, maybe it's not funny to him, but I thought it was funny and you're laughing. I said, this is a little snack. And he's like, oh, well. And he picked his one dog up and he goes, if your dogs are vicious, I guess we'll go to the other side. Now, the test for that was, are you really going to accuse me of having vicious dogs? I don't at all. So I had to defend that. So I said, well, actually, it's not that my dogs are vicious. It's that you're on the wrong side. If you see the sign, that was kind of snarky, I guess. If you see the sign, small dogs are supposed to be right over there. So then he made 2 really mean comments to me, and I said, Happy Mother's Day. It was actually Mother's Day. I just finished having brunch with my son, and I was going to another fun occasion. Happy Mother's Day. And he made another snarky comment, and that was it. And I walked away, and I thought,
well, think of how that could have ruined your day,
right?
If you had gotten upset and and then for what? That man goes on with his life.
Well, he was really mad and stayed in the parking lot
and then
fuming for a while, and I didn't think that was funny.
And he has a terrible day.
Maybe.
And you go on and enjoy your life, and you've learned to release that, and now you're calmer, your patterns are different. I mean, it's so amazing when you start to see things differently.
Yes.
And you get curious about it and you're like, okay, I don't need to do this anymore.
Okay, but here's the next question, because Alex and I have talked before about having an accountability partner, but we said we don't want to use accountability when it comes to emotions. We haven't gotten there yet, but a witness is with our emotions, but accountability is a friend or a colleague or a therapist or a journal that says to us, you're thinking this about yourself, you're being overly critical of yourself. That's not necessarily true. Rose Ann, is there a way to have an accountability partner when it comes to running your beliefs through someone else's filter in order to determine whether a person is being too critical of himself and not having radical self-love and compassion?
Well, I think that's a really there's a lot of vulnerability with that, and so I do think you can have that, but you choose wisely, like who's your person,
right?
Who
because
you feel that has that space of unconditional love.
But isn't it true that we're so critical of ourselves sometimes that if we're saying something about ourselves and then we say it out loud to a loved one, they might say that's not necessarily accurate?
Yes,
like you said to me on the way here today.
Yes, and
okay.
So I think absolutely. But
okay.
I would say you can also, which I think is just as empowering, is if you can be that person for yourself as well. So think about it when you say, "Oh, I'm terrible at this," or this, I suck at this, or I'm getting too emotional. Imagine that then you're your own friend.
Right.
And so that I'm there and that I'm saying that, what would you say to me?
Okay.
So you talk to yourself like you would talk to a friend. Because, or sometimes I even think of this with my children,
okay.
right? Because if my son says something like, "Oh, I'm not that good at this, Mom," of course, of course I'll say, "Of course you are. You're amazing. You're this, you're that."
But you're his mother.
And he'll say, and actually he'll say to me, "But Mom, but you're my mom. You have to say that." And I'm like, that's actually not true. I really do look, because the way that I see him,
right?
Like, I wish you could see you the way that I see you. But if I could see myself, if I could step outside, this is an awareness thing, right? If I could step outside myself and say, if that was Ginger saying that to me, what would I say back to her?
Exactly.
I wouldn't let you sit there and say all those awful things about yourself. I would say, are you kidding?
Right.
So we have to also train ourselves to be able to interrupt those thought processes and almost like become your higher self or your
right.
little kid person, and
right.
and talk to yourself that way and interrupt that and say, you would never say that to your friend. You would never tell somebody else that. So yes, I think it's good to have an accountability partner, and you can find those people in your lives. But you can also sit there yourself and say, if that was me, no way would I. If Ginger was saying that right now, what I'm saying in my head about myself, if she was saying that about herself, I would absolutely interrupt her and say, that's ridiculous.
Okay, and I just want to thank you. I want to point out that having an accountability partner to help identify beliefs is a great way to identify those beliefs. We will be talking in step 5 about connecting with one's higher self, one's true essence, aligning with authenticity. But unless you've exercised those muscles of being able to,
very good point.
Sometimes in meditation, connect with one's higher self, it really requires discipline and it requires actual application. So we'll be talking about that a little bit more later. So thank you for what you said. And if you're not there yet, because it takes a while sometimes to be able to really identify by oneself what thoughts are serving or no longer serving. We will help you flex those muscles and really train on that down the line. So thank you for that point.
Community is really important. And I think that that's what you were getting at, is that it is critical to have a community who supports your journey.
Or even one person.
Yeah.
Okay. So we've talked about that in season 1, having at least, I remember Ramiro asking how many people, even one person sometimes. And then sometimes if you don't even have one person, either having a mental health professional or even using a journal. I want to move into the shame cycle, because what is that, Rose Ann, and how does one avoid, how do we, when we're radically self-loving and when we are using compassion to be curious about the cause of a belief, how do we stay out of that downward vortex shame cycle?
Well, to me, shame is such a low vibration emotion, probably the lowest. And we know that when we're in that low vibration, we're not going to be able to function or find happiness or joy in our lives.
So let me interrupt. How do you identify that a person is in a shame cycle?
Well, I think that when shaming is what we do when we are people do when we feel bad about a behavior,
or threatened by a behavior. People will point fingers in shame. If a person's authentic with them, they're holding up a mirror, and therefore they sometimes are the recipient of some accusations and projections, right?
Yeah, I feel like shame and fear are probably the most common and the lowest vibration emotions, and they're definitely connected.
Yes.
But understand that, I feel like any time that you are in a space where you're not feeling good, you can trace it back to shame or fear.
I agree with that. In fact, Alex and I are going to be talking about what happens when a person experiences fear and how to deal with that emotion. And as we remember from last week, what happens in the brain when the fear comes and what happens in the body biologically with the hormones that are released. But with regard to the shame cycle and the low vibrations, Rose Ann, how does one climb out of that?
Well, that's where curiosity comes in.
Okay.
And the best way you have to interrupt those thought processes.
How do you do that? Because hang on, I'm sorry, we're breaking it down.
Yeah.
So Alex and I talked about a couple weeks ago, I interrupted and hijacked a shame cycle that I'm stupid, right? If I don't know how to do something, the thought comes, you're stupid. It didn't come from me. It came from outside. I don't think I'm stupid. But the way I was able to hijack that thought was, I'm not stupid because I achieved certain things in life, right? So I was able to knock that thought away. And so now I'm not embarrassed to ask questions that someone would say, don't you know the answer to that? And there's a hidden shame message in that, right? Of you should know that. That's a should, right? So keep going.
Well, so you have to interrupt the shame cycle. So the first step is really just awareness. And this is the work that you're doing here.
Identifying the cause.
Identifying the cause. So once you have the awareness, it's almost like you can it's almost like you're a second person, again, talking outside yourself, like, oh, wait a minute, this is showing up again.
Well, does looking in the mirror and saying, I love you, interrupt the shame cycle? Because Alex has done that work and was able to climb out of some behaviors and beliefs that he had previously had prior to doing a amazing life journey workshop type.
Well, the most amazing thing about that is that the more you practice it, the quicker the awareness comes and the easier it comes. So the first couple
awareness
times
of shame. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, awareness of shame cycle.
But this is a shame cycle. I feel it coming. Okay.
I know the cause of this. I need to interrupt this.
Right.
And a lot of times, actually, at the beginning especially, is the way that you can have interrupters in your environment. So that's where people will put like a Post-it note or a screensaver, or even I got to a point where this is going to sound really silly, but it's super effective because you have it with you all the time, is that when you get in a high vibration, when you're feeling love, when you're feeling gratitude, and you've got that feeling, I would touch my two fingers together, just like this, right?
Okay.
And then you sit with it, and then your brain starts to associate this with that feeling of gratitude.
Oh, wow. That's a
So-
practical way of applying the high vibration association with the brain.
So the more you practice it, the faster the association starts
Right before
to
you
come.
snap out of it.
That's right. So what happens is so you practice when you're in that positive space. So then when the shame cycle starts to come in and you start saying I'm stupid or whatever, just by touching these two fingers, it signals your brain, I have gratitude. I remember, and this is an interrupter.
Well, and so is snapping. Right?
Yes.
And so
yes.
we're going to get to that because after we've done step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, then we go into 5, 6, 7, 8, and that's the snap.
And you snap.
Right? Because you're really biologically connecting what you've learned. So you're ahead of us, Professor.
But this is an interrupter,
very good.
And you have to practice. So yes, Alex standing in the mirror and saying, I love you, puts him in a vibration space.
Yes.
Then as the shame cycles come, he can get there more quickly.
Yes.
He can get out of it more quickly. Yes. He can say, I love you more quickly. He can get to that place. So we have to start by just the awareness.
Okay, very good.
And then we start by interrupting that awareness by anchorings of things in our environment, our fingers. And then we can find humor in it. Like I said, the humor is really a great interrupter because it mellows out the emotion, right? If I start laughing at something or if I find humor in it, okay, I keep saying I'm stupid and I know where this is coming from. Ha ha, you're challenging me, but I'm not going to let you get me this time. And then that brings it down. So instead of having that road rage, you can laugh. Oh, I knew you were going to put a guy in front of me today, but you're not going to get me. Right. I'm going to bring down my vibration. And then you calm. And our body will learn to calm more quickly and more quickly and more quickly. This is why things like mindfulness and gratitude and meditation help us to rewire those patterns so that we can get to them more quickly.
Right. And they become superhighways in our brain, and our bodies take the muscle memory and remember it.
So it's repetition.
Yes.
But the way we start is we notice.
Right.
We have an awareness.
Yes.
We interrupt.
Yes.
And then we have accountability, and those patterns repeat, and eventually that will become your way of living. You'll make an identity shift.
Yes, right.
You actually make that identity shift, and you won't even remember that
what it
you
was
used
like
to get
before.
mad at that kind of stuff.
I agree.
Or that you used to call yourself stupid because it's no longer in your, it's no longer there. It doesn't exist anymore.
And speaking of identity shifts, thank you for that, because identity shifts are possible, and we are moving into our authentically aligned self. Not everyone wants to shift their identity. Some people want to stay in their current reality, and there's no judgment on that whatsoever. Because again, we don't want to point fingers or get into a shame cycle.
Well, whatever they're doing has a positive intention.
Well,
and they're
if
just
it's
not ready, and they're not
exactly.
ready.
And if it's no longer serving, then we've given you some skills and some tools to be able to snap out of limiting beliefs, snap out of maladaptive behaviors. Identify the cause in order to have compassion and curiosity as to how and whether that cause is still serving you. So if you're starting a new business, or if you're in school trying to get an education and you need to rocket launch and spend those hours working hard, then absolutely do it. If that belief will get you where you're trying to go. If the belief is causing your body harm because you're getting stomach aches or having too much stress or heart palpitations or something that can indicate to you that that belief is no longer serving you, then you might want to snap out of that and move into a more authentically aligned self. So in my case, I snapped out of working at that level in order to be more authentically aligned with who I am and to be able to teach what I've learned to the viewer and the listener. So I want to conclude with the I am statements, Rose Ann, because you talked about your higher self, and we're going to get into that in a couple of more episodes. But let's talk about the identification and identity shift, because even though we're not there yet, we're going to be moving into that. And so as I was listening to you on a different podcast, I heard you talking about the I am statement. Specifically, you were talking about being a teacher who writes, and then you mentioned that, well, you can change that I am statement to I am a writer who teaches.
Well, right. If we want to change and create change, to make that identity shift, it is an identity level shift. And in order to make that, oftentimes it's just the language that we use.
Exactly.
Okay? So, and I see this with my students, and I was talking about as a teacher or writer. If I'm a teacher who writes, then my priorities in my life are all about my teaching, and my writing is just something I do on the side. It's not really who I am. It's like this fake thing that I'm doing for fun. But if I'm a writer who teaches, then all of a sudden you can see the shift. The writing becomes my priority, and the teaching is what pays my bills. And so you do that shift, but then all of a sudden I've given myself permission to write.
Exactly.
Because I am a writer first, so I give myself permission, whereas before I always put that aside.
Yes.
Now this can happen with people who want to become healthier.
Right.
Instead of saying oh, I want to go to the gym, but they don't really believe that they're a person who that's their identity. Well, I am healthy and I take care of my body first. You made that shift. You made that identity shift
Exactly.
with your bike in the middle of the day.
Yes, I'm
because
a healthy person snapping out of limiting beliefs that keep me chained to a desk.
Before, I'm a lawyer first and I get my workouts in when I can.
Right.
Now I'm a healthy person, and because I'm healthy, I can be a lawyer.
That's
so
right.
I can prioritize my
Correct.
working out.
That's exactly right.
And I made that identity shift, and all of a sudden you've given yourself permission to step into that identity.
Right.
And by the way, it's serving you and your clients better.
That's exactly right. And it's providing.
I see it with my students all the time.
Yes.
Who come in, and when they make the shift from I'm a student trying to get a grade to I'm a scholar.
There you go.
Because when you're a scholar, then
you do study on your own.
You
without
study
having to
on
feel,
your own.
Exactly.
You recognize that you're here for the learning, and that you enjoy that, and you want to become better at what you do. But if I'm just trying to get a grade, then it's a burden, and it's something that is taking up my time, and it's something I don't really want to do, but I have to. No, I get to go to school now.
Yes.
I don't have to go to school. I get to go to school because I'm a scholar.
That's right.
I get to ride my bike in the middle of the day because I'm a healthy person who prioritizes my mental health and physical health.
And values authenticity and health and well-being over the rat race.
Right. So we shift our language to shift our identity to create those spaces for permission to be who we are, and then we can step into our authentic selves.
Exactly. I'm so glad we're aligned in this way, and what a joy it is to have someone who I've known for many, many years be on a similar path. I hope that you are able to take something from this podcast because you're on the journey as well. And I hope that the viewers and the listeners are able to take something from this podcast.
I love the work that you're doing, and I'm so excited for this to get out there, and that I feel really blessed and have a lot of gratitude for the opportunity to sit here with you, but also for the opportunity that you're giving to your viewers. And it's so important because as we do this, we know we raise the vibration of everyone.
And that's the motivation. So raising the vibration of everyone and helping all to ascend those who are ready. And it's a challenge, and it's a risk for me, especially. I have colleagues in the field of mental health, the field of law. Obviously, we talked about my fear of being rejected by the audience. Oh, what does she have to say? I'm not claiming to be an expert in anything, but I am doing this as a service to the viewer because I would like for others who are ready to be able to snap out of limiting beliefs, to be able to stop maladaptive behaviors, to be able to authentically align with oneself. And we do have 2 more steps to go on how to do that. And so please let us know how it's going. Let us know your thoughts, and we'll invite Professor back at a subsequent episode because I'm sure your questions are coming in. So thank you so much for taking your time to come here today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and I look forward to doing a road trip with you. I promise not to flip anyone off on our way to Arizona. Yeah, in LA, there's a road rage. People can get shot. But thank you so much again for joining us today. And again, step 3, identify that cause. What is the belief? What is the behavior that's no longer serving you? Be compassionate with yourself as you do. Don't get caught in that shame cycle. And then just get curious. Where did this come from? Did it originate with me? Did it originate with my family of origin? Did I see it on social media? Is it fed to me in the news cycle? Because you may decide that belief is no longer serving you. And if it's no longer serving you, we look forward to seeing you next time when we can help you snap out of it.